Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I stood in the kitchen, my hands steady as I basted the lamb with the herb-infused glaze. The smell of rosemary, garlic, and olive oil filled the air, mixing with the subtle heat of the oven. Everything was coming together perfectly. Elena would be pleased. My name is Nathan Carver. I'm 38 years old, and I own a vineyard in Napa Valley, a place I've poured my blood, sweat, and tears into for the last 10 years. It's been my dream since I was a kid, working the land with my dad, learning how to care for the vines. But tonight wasn't about the vineyard, it was about family. Elena had asked me to make dinner for her parents, a gesture of goodwill, she said, to try and patch things up between me and her family. As if I could ever really earn their approval. I glanced out the window of our kitchen, catching a glimpse of the sprawling vineyard outside. The vines were starting to green again, a hopeful sign of the upcoming harvest. But the only thing that felt fertile tonight was the tension in the air. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I wiped my hands on the apron and went to answer it, my heart picking up speed. There they were, Margaret and Victor, Elena's parents. The two people who had made it their life's mission to treat me like an outsider, despite the fact that I had built a successful vineyard from the ground up. "Hi, Nathan," Margaret said, her tone cool but polite. "Smells lovely in here." "Thanks, Margaret," I said, forcing a smile. "Come in." Victor, her husband, simply nodded as he entered, his eyes scanning the kitchen with disinterest. He never bothered to hide his disdain for me. They never did. I ushered them into the dining room, where the table was set for 4. It was a small dinner, just us and Elena's parents. I hoped it would go well, but deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Elena appeared in the doorway, wearing that smile of hers, the one she put on whenever she tried to smooth over the cracks in the family dynamic. "Elena, darling," Margaret said, leaning in to kiss her daughter's cheek. "Everything looks beautiful." "Thanks, Mom," Elena replied. But there was something in her voice, an edge I couldn't place. Was she nervous, or was it something else? We all took our seats at the table. The lamb, perfectly roasted, was sliced and arranged in front of us, accompanied by roasted vegetables and a crisp bottle of white wine from my vineyard. I had planned everything down to the smallest detail. I wanted this evening to be perfect. But as we began to eat, I couldn't help but notice the little things. The way Margaret picked at her food, the subtle disapproval in her eyes every time she glanced at me. Victor, who barely touched his wine, seemed distracted, his gaze drifting toward his phone every few minutes. And Elena. She was different, distant. Her eyes kept darting to her phone under the table, something I hadn't seen before. "So, Nathan," Julian's voice suddenly cut through the silence. Elena's brother. He'd been quiet until now, sitting back in his chair, his arms crossed. "How's the vineyard? Still farming the fancy grapes?" I froze for a second, the way he said it, like it was something beneath him. "Yeah, still making wine," I replied evenly, my fingers tightening around my fork. "You know, I don't really get it," he continued, smirking. "All this fancy wine business seems a little pretentious to me. I mean, it's just grapes, right?" I could feel my pulse quicken. The undercurrent of tension that had been there all evening suddenly surged. "Julian," Elena said sharply, her tone unusually cold. "Don't." But he didn't stop. "I just don't get it, man. Vineyard owner. Sounds so, well, you know." He shrugged, as if my profession were some sort of joke. I forced a smile. "Well, Julian, I guess it's better than working a 9-to-5 job that doesn't go anywhere, right?" I shot back, hoping to keep it light. Julian chuckled. "Touché," he said, but I could tell it didn't land the way I wanted. Elena shifted in her seat, and I noticed her glancing at her phone again. Something was off. Her body language was tense, as if she was preparing for something. "You two still planning on having kids anytime soon?" Margaret's voice cut through the silence, as sharp as a knife. It was a question she'd asked me every time she saw me, as if she thought my vineyard could somehow compensate for the lack of children in our marriage. "Mom, please," Elena said, her voice strained. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "We're still figuring things out," I said, trying to keep things casual, but I could feel the weight of Margaret's gaze pressing down on me. But I could tell the real reason for the discomfort at the table wasn't just the conversation. It was Elena. She wasn't herself tonight, and I couldn't figure out why. She seemed distracted, distant, her eyes flickering back to her phone every few seconds. Something was wrong, something that felt like a storm was coming, and I didn't know how to stop it. The night dragged on, and the undercurrent of tension only grew stronger. By the time dessert came, the dinner had devolved into awkward small talk, punctuated by Julian's barbed comments about my profession and Margaret's endless probing questions about when Elena and I would settle down properly. But through it all, Elena barely spoke. She picked at her food and seemed lost in her phone. Every time I tried to engage her in conversation, she responded with half-hearted answers. It felt like she wasn't even there. I finished my wine and tried to keep the conversation going, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something deep. But I didn't know what it was yet. I would find out soon enough. And when I did, it would shatter everything I thought I knew about Elena, and about the family I had tried so hard to be a part of. The evening ended uneventfully, or so I thought. The table cleared, the dishes were piled up, and Margaret and Victor left shortly after dessert. Elena seemed to breathe a sigh of relief the moment the door closed behind them, but something in her posture, the way she slumped into the couch, eyes glued to her phone, made my stomach tighten. I cleaned up quickly, trying to ignore the growing knot in my chest. I knew something wasn't right. Elena hadn't been herself all night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than I was being told. "I'll just grab a few more things from the cellar," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Want anything?" She didn't look up from her phone. "No, I'm good," she replied absent-mindedly. I grabbed the keys off the counter and headed for the cellar, the cool air of the wine storage room, offering a brief, silent escape from the tension that had followed me all evening. I spent a few minutes organizing the shelves, picking up a few stray bottles that had been left out of place. But my mind wasn't on the wine. I could hear Elena's voice, murmured but still sharp, coming from the back patio. The sliding door had been left open, the chill of the night creeping inside. My heart sank as I recognized the sound of her conversation. It was her brother, Julian. I told myself I shouldn't listen, that it wasn't my place, but I couldn't stop myself. My feet seemed to move of their own accord, pulling me toward the door, where I stood in the shadows, trying to make myself as inconspicuous as possible. The conversation that unfolded next was a punch to the gut. "You need to end it, Elena." Julian's voice was low, urgent. "Before you're stuck with him for good." I felt my blood run cold. What the hell was he talking about? Stuck with me? I don't know," Elena replied, her voice wavering slightly. "I keep telling myself things will get better, but..." Her voice trailed off. I could hear Julian sigh, like he was trying to be patient but was losing his temper. "You know he's not the right guy for you. This vineyard stuff, it's all he cares about. It's like he's married to that place, not you." I winced. It hurt. I tried not to take it personally, but it was hard not to. The thing I had built from nothing, the thing I was most proud of, was now a point of ridicule. But there was more. The worst was yet to come. "You're working with the lawyer, right?" Julian's voice dropped lower, and I had to strain to hear the words. There was a long pause before Elena spoke, almost too quietly for me to catch, but I managed to make out the words. "Yeah, I've already been in touch with him. I'll get my half. Nathan will never see it coming. I'll make sure we get the vineyard too." She sounded cold, detached, like she was already planning my downfall. My world seemed to stop. The floor beneath me felt like it was cracking open, the weight of what I'd just heard threatening to pull me into the abyss. Elena, my wife, had been plotting to take everything from me, everything I had worked for, the vineyard, our home, and me. I wasn't just a victim of her family's coldness. I was a target. I heard Julian's smug chuckle. "Good, that's exactly what I was hoping to hear. We'll get what's ours." The conversation continued for another few minutes, but I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind was reeling. I needed to act, to think of something. But I was frozen. The trust I had placed in Elena, the love I thought we shared, it was all a lie. She wasn't the woman I had married. She wasn't the woman I had fought for. I didn't wait for them to finish their conversation. I turned and walked back into the cellar, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel my hands shaking as I grabbed a bottle of red and twisted the cork off. The cool, sharp smell of wine filled my nose, but it did nothing to dull the ache spreading through my chest. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to process this. Elena had made a fool of me. But worse, she had made me feel like a fool in front of my own family, my own life's work. It was as if all my efforts had been for nothing. I drank the wine in one go, and then another, not caring that I wasn't supposed to be drinking alone like this, not caring that it wouldn't change anything. After a while, I heard Elena's footsteps approaching. The sound of the door sliding open made me look up, and there she was. Standing in the doorway of the cellar, her eyes searching me as if trying to figure out what was wrong. I stood there for a moment, just staring at her. My wife. The woman I thought I knew. "What's going on, Nathan?" she asked, her voice softer now, though I could hear the faint tremor in it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I couldn't find the words to describe the betrayal, the anger that was bubbling up inside me. She stood there, waiting for me to speak, her phone still clutched in her hand like a lifeline. But I didn't need to say anything. She already knew. "Do you love me?" I finally asked, my voice rough. Her expression faltered, and she opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. I knew the answer before she even tried to speak. I walked past her and up the stairs, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. She followed, calling after me, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The truth was out, and I wasn't sure what I would do with it yet. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take what I had built. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind raced, replaying everything I'd overheard between Elena and Julian. The betrayal was too much to process, too overwhelming to make sense of. I spent hours pacing the house, my thoughts spinning, trying to figure out what to do next. I couldn't confront Elena, not yet. I needed to think, to regroup. The next morning, I called Cole Ramirez. Cole was my vineyard manager, my right-hand man, and more than that, he was one of the few people I trusted completely. We'd known each other since high school, both of us growing up in Napa, working odd jobs together before I started the vineyard. He'd seen me through the best and worst times, and right now, I needed him more than ever. Cole answered after the second ring. "Nathan," he said, his voice groggy but steady. "What's up?" "I need to see you," I said, my voice tight. "Can you meet me at the vineyard? It's important." There was a pause on the other end, then Cole responded, "I'll be there in 20. I hung up, not giving myself time to second-guess what I was about to do. I couldn't go through this alone. I needed someone who would understand the depth of what was happening, someone who could help me navigate the storm that was coming. I got in my truck and drove out to the vineyard, the sun still low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rows of vines. The place had always been my sanctuary. It was where I found peace, where I built something that was mine. But now, it felt like a battleground. I parked by the barn and waited for Cole. 10 minutes later, I saw his truck pull up, the engine rumbling as he shut it off. He climbed out, his face a mix of concern and curiosity. I waved him over, and he walked up with long strides. "You look like hell," he said, a small grin forming on his lips. "What's going on?" I didn't waste time. "I found out Elena's been planning to take everything from me," I said flatly. "She's been working with a lawyer to take half the vineyard, the house, everything." Cole's grin dropped, his eyes hardening. "What the hell are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Last night I overheard her talking to her brother. They were plotting against me, saying they'd get the vineyard in the divorce. Elena thinks she can get away with it, but I'm not going to let her." Cole ran a hand through his hair, his jaw clenched. "Jesus, man, you've got to be kidding me." I shook my head. "I'm not. This is real, and I don't know what to do about it. She's been playing me this whole time, Cole. I thought we were happy, that we were building something together, but now I see it for what it really was. She's just been waiting for the right moment to take what's mine." "Have you talked to her?" Cole asked, his voice serious. I exhaled slowly, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I thought about it. Number. I don't even know what I'd say. She's been distant for weeks now, and I just didn't see it until last night. I'm not even sure I can trust her anymore. Cole nodded slowly, his face hardening. "You can't just let her walk all over you, Nathan. You've worked too damn hard for this, for everything. You've got to fight back." "I don't know where to start," I said, my voice low. "This isn't just about a divorce or money. It's everything. She's my wife. And now, I feel like she's been lying to me all along." "You need to protect yourself," Cole said, his voice firm. "You need to get your ducks in a row, legally and financially. We need to figure out how to keep this place safe." I nodded. "I know. That's why I called you." Cole thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. "I've got a cousin, Felicity. She's a financial strategist. She's helped me out before with some tricky stuff. She knows how to shield assets in high-value disputes like this. She can help. I stared at him, feeling a small sense of relief. You think she'll be able to help with the vineyard? Cole gave me a sharp look. You're damn right she can. She's not just some accountant. She's the real deal. I'll call her right now. He dialed the number, waiting for her to pick up. Felicity, he said when she answered. I need your help. Nathan's in a situation, and we need to start making moves. Can you meet us at the vineyard? There was a pause, and then Cole nodded. Great, thanks. See you soon? He hung up and turned to me. She'll be here in about an hour. I didn't feel any less tense, but I knew we were taking the first step. I'd been blindsided by Elena's betrayal, but I wasn't going to sit back and let her ruin everything I had worked for. I was going to fight. Cole clapped me on the shoulder. You're not alone in this, Nathan. We'll fix this. Thanks, man, I said, my voice tight with gratitude. I don't know what I would do without you. You'll never have to find out, he said, his tone light but serious. Let's get this handled. Felicity arrived an hour later, her sharp suit and confident stride, making it clear she was exactly the kind of person I needed right now. She shook my hand with a firm grip, her eyes assessing me before they landed on the vineyard behind me. So, she said, her voice cool and professional, tell me everything. And just like that, the wheels of protection were set into motion. We started discussing how to shield the vineyard, how to restructure ownership, and how to make sure Elena and her family couldn't take what was mine. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Cole's support and Felicity's expertise, I was ready to fight back. I wasn't going to let Elena take everything from me. I had built this, and I would keep it, no matter the cost. The days that followed felt like a game of chess. I moved carefully, each step deliberate, as I prepared for what was coming. With Cole and Felicity's help, I began to protect myself, shielding assets, restructuring the vineyard's ownership, and putting legal safeguards in place. But there was one thing I had to do first: maintain the illusion that everything was fine, at least for now. I couldn't let Elena know that I knew what she was planning. She still thought I was oblivious, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. No, if I was going to beat her at her own game, I needed to play my part. I spent the next few days as the perfect husband, supportive, loving, attentive, while I quietly prepared for war. I showered her with unexpected gifts, like the necklace I bought at the boutique downtown, and the bouquet of lilies I picked out just for her. Each gesture was calculated, each smile forced. Elena, for her part, seemed confused. She'd smile at me, but it was a strained smile, like she didn't know whether to be grateful or suspicious. The more I played the role of the perfect husband, the more I could see her second-guessing her own plans. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. One evening, I took her out to dinner, a fancy reservation at the best restaurant in town, just like the kind of place she loved. As we sat across from each other, sipping wine and nibbling on appetizers, she seemed unusually quiet, her eyes flickering to her phone now and then. What's going on, Elena? I asked, trying to sound casual as I took a sip of my own wine. You've been distant lately. Is everything okay? She set her glass down, her fingers absently tracing the edge of the stem. I'm fine, she replied, her voice tight. But she didn't meet my gaze, her focus drifting toward her phone once again. I resisted the urge to press her further. She was up to something, and I knew it wasn't just the stress of the upcoming events she was dealing with, but I needed to keep playing the role of the doting husband for just a little longer. I had to get her to let her guard down completely. I was thinking, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, we could take a trip, a romantic getaway. Italy, maybe? The vineyards in Tuscany, just you and me. Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of Italy, and for a moment, I saw the spark of interest in her eyes. That was the reaction I wanted. I could already see her imagining the trip, imagining a different life, one without the complications of our marriage. That sounds amazing, she said softly, her voice almost wistful. But we're so busy with everything. The vineyard, the wedding plans. Forget the wedding plans, I interrupted, my tone light but firm. We'll figure everything else out later. Italy's only a short flight away. We could use a break, Elena. Just you and me. She hesitated, her eyes flickering to her phone again. But then, to my surprise, she nodded. Okay, let's think about it. The tension in her shoulders seemed to ease a little, though I could still see the wariness in her eyes. She didn't fully trust me, I could feel it, but for a brief moment, she let herself imagine a future where things were different, where there was no betrayal, no plotting. That night, as we drove home, I felt the weight of her indecision, but I knew something she didn't. The plan was already in motion. She couldn't take what was mine, not if I had anything to say about it. When we got home, I found her on the couch, scrolling through her phone again. I walked over and sat next to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I know you've been stressed," I said softly, "and I know things haven't been easy, but you can't keep this up, Elena. We have to talk about what's going on between us. You've been distant, and I don't want us to fall apart." Her face hardened for a split second, and I saw the flicker of something cold behind her eyes. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by that practiced smile. "You're right," she said, her voice almost too calm. "I've just been busy. I haven't had time to think about anything else." I nodded, trying to keep the anger and betrayal out of my voice. "Just don't forget, I'm here. We're a team, Elena. We've always been a team." But the words didn't feel true anymore. Not in my heart, not after everything I'd heard, everything I knew. She stood up, offering a quick kiss to my cheek. "Thanks, Nathan," she said. "You're right. I'll try to be more present. We'll figure it out." I watched her walk away, my heart sinking deeper with each step she took. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her take my vineyard without a fight, and I wasn't going to let her think I was the fool anymore. As I stood there in the silence of our home, I felt the weight of the decision I had made, the path I had chosen. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to do what was necessary. And Elena had no idea what was coming. The days bled into each other, and I kept up the charade, smiling at Elena, doting on her, playing the role of the devoted husband. But all the while, I was laying the groundwork to protect myself, to shield everything I had worked for. I knew Elena was working behind my back, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. Cole and Felicity had been invaluable in helping me secure the vineyard's future, but I knew it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed evidence. Hard evidence that would expose Elena's plot and destroy whatever chance she had at taking what was mine. It was early on a Friday afternoon when Cole called me with the news I'd been waiting for. "Got the paperwork for the shell company set up," he said. "Your assets are protected. Felicity's working on a few final touches, but we've got a solid foundation. You're untouchable for now." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It felt good to know that part of the plan was finally in motion. "Good. Keep me updated." "Absolutely, but I'm also digging into her finances." "You need to see this," Cole continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Elena's been siphoning money from your joint account for months. There's a trail of withdrawals, and they're all connected to Patrick Sloan, her divorce attorney." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Patrick Sloan. The man she'd been meeting with. The one who'd promised her half of everything. He was her accomplice, helping her take everything I'd built, turning it all into a game. I could feel my blood boil as the realization set in. Elena had been plotting this for so long, and I hadn't seen it until now. "Do you have proof?" I asked, my voice sharp with anger. "Yeah," Cole replied. "Photos, bank statements, everything's lined up. It's damning." I didn't say anything for a moment. The silence hung heavy between us, but I could hear the gears in my mind turning, formulating a plan. "We'll take this to the Napa Wine Gala," I said suddenly. "We'll expose everything there, in front of everyone." "Are you sure about this?" Cole asked, a note of caution in his voice. "That's a bold move, Nathan. A public spectacle." "I don't care anymore," I said, my voice hardening. "If she wants to embarrass me, then I'll do the same. I'm done being the fool. She's going to pay for this. She's going to pay for everything." Cole hesitated, but then I heard him sigh on the other end. "All right, I'll get the documents ready. You know I've got your back." "I know. Thanks, Cole." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. The Napa Wine Gala was just around the corner, a prestigious event where the vineyard elite from across the region gathered for an evening of wine, food, and charity. Elena's family would be there, of course, mingling with a high society crowd, pretending everything was fine. But it wouldn't be fine anymore, not once I exposed Elena for what she truly was. I had the documents, I had the proof. Now it was time to make my move. The evening of the Napa Wine Gala arrived faster than I expected. The event was held at a sprawling estate just outside the city. The venue decorated with elegant floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and glowing candlelight. It was the kind of event that made you feel like you were living in a dream, or at least, that's how Elena's family saw it. To them, this was the world they belonged to. I showed up at the gala looking every bit the part. A sharp black suit, polished shoes, the perfect amount of cologne. I walked into the venue with my head held high, my eyes scanning the room for Elena. She was already there, of course, in a stunning gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, a vision of elegance that made it all too easy for people to forget the darkness she was hiding. As I approached her, I noticed her stiffening slightly, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Nathan," she greeted, her voice just a touch too sweet. "You look handsome tonight." I forced a smile. "Thank you. You look incredible as always." She seemed pleased by the compliment, but I could see the unease behind her eyes. I knew she was wondering why I hadn't confronted her yet, and that was exactly how I wanted it. "Why don't we get a drink?" I suggested, my tone casual. "We deserve a night off, don't we?" She nodded, though her gaze flickered nervously around the room. I led her to the bar, where we each grabbed a glass of wine. As we sipped, I noticed Elena's parents, Margaret and Victor, talking to some of the other guests, their eyes scanning the room like they were looking for something, or perhaps someone. I couldn't help but notice the way they ignored me when they saw me approach. It was like I was invisible to them, even though I had done everything in my power to make them see me as part of their family. I leaned in close to Elena, my voice low. "You know, I've been thinking about what you said the other night," I said casually, as if it were just a simple conversation, about how we're going to split things after the divorce. Elena's face froze, and for a split second, I could see the panic in her eyes before she covered it up with a practiced smile. "Nathan, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice far too calm. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied, taking a sip of my wine and letting the silence stretch between us. "I heard everything, you and Julian. Your plan to take the vineyard and leave me with nothing." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a brief moment, I saw her posture stiffen. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, but there was a tremor in her voice. I could feel the thrill of the moment building. "You're right," I said, my smile cold. "But I've got something here that says otherwise." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, setting it on the bar in front of her. Her face paled as she glanced down at it. "What is this?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. I leaned in closer, my voice low and steady. "It's everything, Elena. Bank statements, photos, text messages, proof that you've been siphoning money from our joint account and working with your lawyer to take everything I've built." I watched her face turn even whiter as she realized what I was holding. "I think it's time to let the truth come out, don't you?" The guests around us began to notice the tension, the subtle shift in the atmosphere, but Elena was too frozen to react. She reached for the envelope, her hand trembling as she opened it, but before she could look inside, I stood up and took the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced loudly, my voice echoing across the room. "Tonight, I'd like to share the truth about someone who's been lying to you all. Elena Carver and her family have been plotting against me for months. They've been trying to take what's mine, including my vineyard." Gasps filled the room as people turned toward us, eyes wide with shock. Elena stood frozen, her face pale, unable to say a word. "I have proof," I continued, my voice steady. "And I'm not going to let her or anyone else take what I've worked for." I held up the envelope, letting the crowd see the contents inside. "I'm donating this evidence to the Napa Wine Gala's charity tonight. Let everyone know the truth about what's been going on behind the scenes." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, a murmur rippled through the crowd as Elena's face twisted in humiliation. She turned toward her family, but they too stood motionless, unsure of what to say. I stepped back, watching her crumble under the weight of her own lies. The crowd began to applaud, some in shock, others in approval. But as the applause grew, Elena's face twisted with rage, and in that moment, I knew I had won. I wasn't the fool anymore. I was taking control, and I was ready to let her family see exactly what they had done. Elena, her plans shattered, fled the scene in humiliation. And I stood there, victorious, knowing that the fight was far from over. But I had just won the first battle. The Napa Wine Gala was supposed to be a celebration, the grandest event of the year, where Napa's elite gathered to rub shoulders, sip the finest wines, and mingle in their designer gowns and tuxedos. The evening had been going smoothly, with guests enjoying the lavish displays of wine, art, and hors d'oeuvres. But as I made my way to the center of the ballroom, the mood shifted, the air charged with anticipation. The moment I stepped onto the stage, the crowd fell into a hushed silence. Elena was standing at the far end of the room, her hand still gripping the champagne flute, as her eyes darted nervously toward me. Her face had been a mask of composure, but now I could see it crumbling, the fear in her eyes becoming unmistakable. I took a breath and adjusted the microphone in front of me, the crowd now fully focused on me. The spotlight was on Elena, and she had nowhere to hide. I had played my part as the perfect husband, all the while gathering everything I needed to expose her, every photo, every bank statement, every message. And now it was time to pull the curtain back. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady, calm, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tonight, I'm here to talk about trust, and more importantly, betrayal. You see, for months, I've been deceived by someone I trusted with everything, my heart, my life, and my business." I paused, letting my words settle over the crowd, my eyes locking onto Elena, who was now visibly trembling. This woman, Elena Carver, and her family have been planning to strip me of everything I've worked for, my vineyard, my livelihood, and my future. I could feel Elena's shock ripple through the room as gasps of disbelief spread among the guests. She was trying to compose herself, but it was too late. She had already been caught in her web of lies. Her eyes flickered to the other side of the room, where Julian was standing with his arms crossed, trying to look unaffected. But even he seemed uneasy, his confident posture faltering as the weight of my words hit him. "Now, I'm not the kind of person who airs his dirty laundry in public," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "But Elena, her brother Julian, and their lawyer, Patrick Sloan, yes, the one who's been offering legal advice, have been plotting to take everything from me. They've been siphoning money from our joint accounts, manipulating the system, and preparing to destroy what I've built, all while pretending everything was fine, while I was still under the impression that we were building a future together." I could see Elena's face lose all color as the truth began to sink in. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. This wasn't the time for excuses, for apologies. This was the time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I pulled out the folder from inside my jacket, the one that contained all the evidence I had gathered. "I have the proof right here," I said, holding up the folder for everyone to see. "Every document, every transaction, every shady deal. It's all in here. And tonight, I'm going to make sure the world knows exactly who Elena Carver is." I handed the folder over to the event organizer, who immediately began displaying the contents on a large projector screen. The crowd shifted uneasily as photos, bank statements, and text messages appeared, each piece of evidence a direct hit to Elena's carefully crafted image. The messages she had exchanged with Patrick Sloan, her plans to divide the vineyard in the divorce, the hidden transfers from our account, all of it flashed across the screen for everyone to see. The room erupted into whispers, but I didn't look away from Elena. I could feel her panic growing. Her eyes darted around the room as the truth started to sink in, and I could see the people she'd been pretending to impress, her friends, her family, start to turn away from her. "Do you still have anything to say for yourself?" I asked, my voice dripping with disdain. Elena's face was pale, her lips trembling, but she remained silent, staring at the screen as if hoping the evidence would somehow disappear. I turned back to the crowd. I won't let her or her family take what I've worked for, and I certainly won't let them ruin my reputation, my vineyard, or my life. The crowd stood frozen, the only sound the faint rustling of whispers that swirled through the room. No one knew what to say. No one knew how to react. The high society crowd that had once admired Elena's polished exterior now stood in shock, their gazes shifting uncomfortably between her and the evidence. Elena took a step back, her hands shaking as she clutched her clutch bag. Her eyes darted to Julian, who now looked like a deer caught in the headlights. He moved toward her, trying to take her hand, but she jerked away, her entire body tense, her face a mask of anger and humiliation. I stepped forward once more, my eyes scanning the crowd. "I want you all to know that the Napa Valley community is about trust and honesty. It's about the people who work hard to create something real, and I've worked harder than anyone to build my vineyard into something that is worth something. Elena and her family may have tried to take that from me, But tonight, I'm taking control back. I paused and looked around at the guests, the ones who had quietly watched as Elena tried to weave her web of deception. I'll make sure that everyone knows the truth about Elena and her family. But tonight, I'll be donating a significant portion of the proceeds from this event to charity, to organizations that support victims of financial fraud and abuse. Because that's where the real work lies, helping those who have been deceived, who have been manipulated. I turned toward Elena, my expression unwavering. As for you, Elena, you'll have to answer for this, but not here, not tonight. Your lies have been exposed. You've lost everything. Her face twisted in fury, but I didn't care. The mask had fallen. The truth was out, and there was no hiding anymore. I walked off the stage, my heart still pounding in my chest. The room remained silent as I made my way out, but I could feel the weight of the moment settling over me. Elena's betrayal had been exposed for all to see, and there was no going back for her now. The crowd slowly began to break into murmurs, but I was done with her, done with the lies, done with everything she had stolen from me. As I stepped into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. The fight wasn't over, but tonight I had won. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the freedom of having nothing left to hide. The days that followed the gala were a blur of calls, texts, and media coverage. Elena's name was all over the news, her family's treachery laid bare for everyone to see. I had expected some backlash, but I never anticipated how quickly everything would spiral for her. I was finally free from the grip of her lies, but it felt like a distant victory. There was still the lingering weight of betrayal that I couldn't shake. I couldn't escape the image of Elena's face as I exposed her, her mask shattering in front of everyone. I stayed away from home for the next few days, taking refuge at the vineyard, sorting through the mess she'd left behind. My phone rang constantly, but I ignored every call from her family, from the lawyer she had been working with. I didn't need to hear their excuses or apologies. They had all made their choices. It wasn't until 3 days later that Elena showed up at the vineyard, knocking on the door of my office with an expression that was a mixture of desperation and defiance. I hadn't heard from her since the gala, and part of me wasn't surprised. I knew she would come. She had nowhere else to go. I didn't get up when she walked in. Instead, I sat behind my desk, my eyes locked on hers, waiting for her to speak. The silence stretched on, the tension thick between us. The last time we had been in this office together, everything was different. Now, everything had changed. "You've made your point, Nathan," Elena said finally, her voice shaky but forced to remain calm. "You've humiliated me, and I'm sure you're proud of yourself." I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "I didn't need to humiliate you. You did that all on your own, Elena. You made the choice to betray me, to destroy everything we had." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. "I was trying to protect myself," she said, the words almost a whisper. "You don't understand how hard it's been. You've never understood the pressure I was under." I shook my head. "Pressure? You think I've never been under pressure? I built this vineyard from nothing, Elena. I put my entire life into it. And you used me. You played me for a fool." She took a step forward, her eyes pleading. "I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to get out of this marriage without losing everything. You could have left me, but you chose to destroy me instead," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "You chose to tear apart everything I've worked for, and for what? So you could have a little more money, a little more power. I didn't want that," she said quickly, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't convincing, and I knew it. "I wanted a future that I couldn't have with you. You never saw me. You never saw what I needed." I exhaled, the weight of the conversation sinking deeper. I had been blind. I had been so wrapped up in my own world, in my vineyard, that I never saw the cracks forming in our marriage. But I couldn't fix it now, not when the damage was already done. I stood up from my desk and walked toward the window, staring out at the rows of vines that stretched out in front of me, the future I had worked so hard to build, now so uncertain. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice low. "I didn't see you. I didn't see that you were planning all of this behind my back. I thought we had something real, but it was just a lie. And now, you're not going to get away with it." Elena didn't speak, and I knew she was waiting for me to back down, to say something that would let her off the hook. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. The moment of silence stretched on, and then my phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting the tension in the room. I glanced at the screen and my heart sank. It was Cole. I didn't answer immediately, but Elena noticed the shift in my expression. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight. I picked up the phone, swiping to answer it. "What's going on, Cole?" His voice came through the line quickly, his tone serious. "Nathan, it's about Victor. You need to know. He's under investigation. The IRS just flagged his tax records and they've linked him to some shady business dealings." I felt my stomach twist. Victor, Elena's father, was always an enigma to me. I knew he had money, lots of it, but I had never been able to figure out how he made it. Now, it seemed like the answers were starting to come to light. "What kind of shady dealings?" I asked, my voice edging toward disbelief. "Real estate, under-the-table loans, maybe even some money laundering. We don't have all the details yet, but it's bad, Nathan. And it's only a matter of time before this catches up to him. This could bring down everything, his business, his reputation, and it's going to spill over into Elena's side of the family." I stood there, trying to process the information. This was bigger than just Elena. This was her entire family, entangled in a mess of their own making. The same family that had tried to destroy me was now on the verge of falling apart themselves. "I'll keep you posted," Cole added, before hanging up. I turned to face Elena, my mind racing. "Victor's in trouble," I said quietly, my voice steady. "The IRS is investigating him for fraud and money laundering. This could destroy everything." Her face went pale as the realization hit her. No, it can't be." She looked down, her hands trembling at her sides. "What does this mean for me? For us?" I took a deep breath, trying to push the anger out of my voice. "It means you're not getting away with this, Elena. Your family's lies are catching up to them, and soon they'll all have to face the consequences." She stared at me, her eyes wide with fear. The woman who had once been my partner, the one I had trusted with everything, was now standing there, her entire world crumbling around her. I had been right about one thing. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about power, money, and betrayal. "I'll be cutting you off financially," I said, my voice firm. "And I'll make sure the vineyard is protected from whatever comes next. But you're on your own now, Elena. You'll have to deal with your family and their mess without me." Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. She was trapped, her lies had caught up with her, and she had no escape. I walked past her, heading for the door. "I've already contacted the lawyers. The divorce papers will be filed soon. It's over." Elena didn't try to stop me. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, her back against the wall as I left the room. I wasn't looking back. There was nothing left for me to hold on to in that marriage, only the aftermath of a betrayal that had shattered everything I once believed in. And now I was free. But Elena? She had just begun to face the consequences of her choices. I could only hope they were as heavy as they deserved to be. Weeks passed, but the silence between Elena and me remained. It was deafening. The divorce was moving forward. Our lawyers were exchanging paperwork, and the financial settlements had started to come together, most of it in my favor, of course. Elena had no choice but to face the reality of her actions, and I wasn't about to make it easy for her. I spent my days at the vineyard, as always, pouring myself into the work I loved. It was the one thing that never betrayed me, the one thing that had always been there for me. But even amidst the vineyard's quiet beauty, there was a weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. The vineyard wasn't just my livelihood, it was my sanctuary. It was where I'd built my future, where I'd found my purpose. And now that future was untouchable. I had to keep reminding myself of that fact. The vineyard wasn't the only thing that was thriving. I was too. I'd found a peace I hadn't known in years, even if it was hard to admit. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. Like I could finally let go of everything Elena had taken from me. Not just the vineyard, but my trust, my belief in love, and in family. A few days after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from my mother. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. After everything that had happened with Elena and her family, I was surprised that she was reaching out. The phone rang, and I didn't hesitate. I needed closure. I picked up. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Nathan?" My mother's voice crackled through the line. "It's me. I've been thinking about everything, about how things went down. And, well, I think I owe you an apology." I let out a slow breath, my grip tightening on the phone. "Go on," I said, my voice calm but guarded. "I wasn't there for you," she continued, her voice softer now, tinged with regret. And I should have been. I should have stood by you. But I let Elena's family manipulate me. I let them control the narrative. And I'm sorry for that. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the rolling hills of the vineyard, letting the wind wash over me as I took in her words. It wasn't easy hearing her apologize, not after everything, but there was something raw, something honest in her voice that I hadn't heard before. "Mom," I said, my voice quieter now, "I don't need an apology. What happened happened. It's done. And I've moved on. I've learned a lot from all of this." There was a long pause, and I could hear her sigh on the other end of the line. "I know, I want you to know that I regret it, that I wish I had been the mother you deserved, but I can't change what I did. All I can do now is hope that you can find it in yourself to forgive me." I swallowed, my throat tight. This wasn't easy. There was a part of me that wanted to scream at her, to remind her of all the ways she had failed me. But there was something else, something that had been brewing in me for a long time, the need to move on, to let go of the past. "I don't think I can forgive you," I said, the words surprisingly steady. "Not yet, but I don't hate you. I can't keep holding on to that. What's done is done, Mom, and I'm going to be okay." "I understand," she whispered. "I really do. I just hope one day you can find peace with it all." "I already have," I said softly. "I found peace the day I walked away from Elena and everything she tried to take from me, and I'm finally free. I'm in a good place now, better than I've ever been." I paused, feeling the weight of everything lifting off my shoulders. I've got people who really care about me now, friends who are there when I need them, and I've got this vineyard. It's all I need, Mom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly speaking the truth. "Good," my mother said, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm glad. I just wish I had been there for you before." I thought about what she said, but I didn't reply. Instead, I let the silence fill the air between us, and in that quiet, I found a strange kind of closure. There were no more words left to say. We'd both said what we needed to say, and I was ready to move on. "I have to go now," I said after a moment. "Take care of yourself, Mom." "Goodbye, Nathan," she replied softly, her voice full of sadness. "Goodbye." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, staring out at the landscape in front of me. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the vineyard, and I let out a long, slow breath. It felt like the final chapter of a long, painful book was closing. I wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, I knew I had something I hadn't had in years: peace, and that was enough. A few weeks later, I decided to throw a small celebration at the vineyard. I invited Cole, Felicity, and a few of the loyal workers who had been with me since the beginning. It was a small gathering, no glitz, no glamour, just a group of people who understood the value of hard work, loyalty, and friendship. We laughed, drank wine, and toasted to new beginnings. I stood at the center of it all, looking around at the people who had supported me, who had seen me through the worst of times. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The sun set behind the vineyard, and I raised my glass high. "To the future," I said, my voice steady but filled with gratitude. "To real success. To those who stick by you when it matters most. And to knowing that no matter what happens, you can always rebuild." They raised their glasses, and the sound of clinking echoed through the air. As I looked out at the people around me, I knew one thing for sure. The betrayal had been painful, but it had made me stronger. It had shown me who I really was and who I was meant to be. The past was behind me, and the future, it was wide open. 3 months later, I opened the doors to the new tasting room. It was everything I had dreamed of: modern, welcoming, and yet deeply rooted in the tradition of Napa. People were already lining up to visit, to taste the wine I had crafted, to see the vineyard that had grown from the ground up. I stood at the entrance, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I had turned betrayal into strength, and now I was living the life I had always wanted. It wasn't just the vineyard that had grown, it was me, and I knew now more than ever that this was only the beginning. The future was mine, and it was going to be beautiful. 3 months had passed since the tasting room opened, and with it, a new chapter in my life. The vineyard had never been more successful, and every day it felt like I was reclaiming something I'd lost, something I had almost given up on. Elena, her family, and all the lies they had spun seemed like a distant memory now. a dark chapter I had walked away from. I had built something far greater than any betrayal could ever take from me. I had built a future. The tasting room was bustling with life. Guests from all over the country, some of them familiar faces from Napa's tight-knit community, others tourists eager to experience the region's best wines. The decor was sleek but warm, blending modern design with rustic charm. And it was a perfect reflection of what I had come to realize about myself. I could adapt, I could grow, and I could create something that wasn't just built on the past, but was firmly rooted in the present, with an eye to the future. Cole was by my side, always. He had stayed loyal through the chaos, helping to run the business smoothly, making sure everything was in place. I couldn't have done it without him, and I was grateful every day for his friendship. Felicity, too, had been indispensable. She'd helped me structure the financial side of the vineyard in a way that made it untouchable by any future threats, and she had proven herself to be not just a financial strategist, but a true partner in every sense of the word. Today, we were hosting our first official event in the new tasting room. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the rows of grapevines that stretched out behind the building. The atmosphere was calm, but charged with the excitement of a fresh start. As I stood at the front, welcoming guests and chatting with familiar faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The vineyard was thriving, the tasting room was packed, and I had the freedom to make choices on my own terms. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Cole joined me, a glass of wine in hand. "You did it, man," he said, his voice thick with pride. I took the glass from him, nodding slowly. "Yeah, I guess I did." I glanced around at the crowd, taking in the laughter, the conversations, the energy of it all. It's strange, how quickly things change. I thought I'd never get out of that place, out of that mess. You did, though, and you came out on top. I smiled, lifting the glass to my lips. Maybe, but I wouldn't have gotten here without the people who stuck by me. Without you, Cole. Without Felicity. "Hey, don't get too sentimental," Cole teased, his grin wide. "You know I'm just here for the wine," I laughed, clinking my glass against his. "Yeah, well, I can't blame you for that. This is the best batch we've ever made." As the evening wore on, I took a moment to step outside and get some air. The cool breeze felt refreshing against my skin as I walked along the gravel path that led to the far end of the vineyard. I had been spending more time out here lately, reflecting on everything I had accomplished. The isolation felt like a necessary part of the healing process. It gave me time to think, to appreciate how far I had come. I stopped for a moment, looking out at the rows of vines that stretched endlessly in front of me. The vineyard was in full bloom now, the grapes starting to ripen under the late summer sun. I could feel the weight of the land beneath my feet, the pulse of it, as if the earth itself had been reborn alongside me. There was a sense of pride that came with it, pride in the land, pride in my work, and pride in the fact that I had built something meaningful, something real. The sound of footsteps behind me made me turn, and I saw Felicity approaching, her expression calm, but her eyes alight with purpose. "How's it going?" she asked, her voice warm. I shrugged, the corners of my mouth lifting into a smile. "Better than I ever could have imagined." She smiled back, taking a step closer. "I'm glad to hear it. You've worked hard for this, Nathan. You deserve it." I glanced at her, grateful for her words. "Thanks, Felicity, really. I've had a lot of people help me get here, but you've been a huge part of it. I couldn't have done it without you." She gave a small nod, a slight blush creeping into her cheeks. "It's nothing, really. I'm just glad I could help." I looked out over the vineyard again, the sunset painting the sky in fiery hues of red and orange. "You ever think about how strange it is?" I asked softly, my voice almost to myself. "How something so beautiful can come from so much pain? The vines, the grapes, the wine. It all starts with something hard, something difficult. But in the end, it's worth it. It's worth everything." Felicity's gaze softened as she took in the view. "It's true. All the best things take time to grow. You just have to be patient." "I guess," I said quietly. "But I'm done being patient. I've been waiting for too long. I've spent enough time trying to fix things that were never meant to be fixed. Now, I'm just going to live. I'm going to enjoy what I've built and keep pushing forward." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if weighing the sincerity in my words. After a moment, she nodded. "That's the spirit. You deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor, Nathan. You've earned it. I took a deep breath, looking back at the vineyard. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally in control of it. And for once, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just living. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted toward us from the tasting room. It was time to rejoin the celebration. I offered Felicity a smile. "Shall we go back inside?" She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "After you." As we walked back toward the tasting room, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything I had been through, everything I had overcome. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the lies, they were all behind me now. And in their place was something far more valuable, a future built on my own terms. For the first time in years, I felt free, and I knew that whatever came next, I would be ready. I wasn't just moving forward, I was thriving,